welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who no longer has a refrigerator in his house. It's Chris Kelly.
Hello, everybody.
So, you don't have a refrigerator in your house anymore after watching King of the Ants.
No, well, to be fair, and now that it's winter time, I can just put my food outside.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to get rid of your refrigerator, winter is a good time.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually what I do. In the summertime, I just throw the food out.
And then you go buy a new refrigerator. Very impractical, Chris Kelly.
Not very practical, but it's totally worth the money.
So I gotta say thank you very much for joining me. So I had a contest on Movies, Films, and Flicks, our Facebook page, and I said whoever gets the most right can pick a movie to be talked about on the podcast. And this guy named Dylan won, top fan. He actually has the badge for Movies, Films, and Flicks. And so he won the contest, and I was like, hey, what movie do you want? So I was thinking something like, I don't know, I'm not bagging on Dylan, but like The Witch or a mainstream film. And then he goes, you know what? I really want to hear about King of the Ants. And
all right.
I immediately went, what? I was like, well, he won, so let's do it. And I knew nothing about this movie. I looked up, I saw the poster. I had seen the poster before. I feel like most people know the poster. Go on Google, type in King of the Ants movie poster, and you will recognize it. And then I saw that Stuart Gordon directed it. And then I saw that there's like Carrie Werner was in it, Ron Livingston, Daniel Baldwin, George Wendt, Vernon Wells from Commando. So there's a decent cast. So I was like, okay, this will be an interesting experience. I've never heard of this movie. I know Stuart Gordon has crushed some good films like Re-Animator. John Levin, good at Movies, Films, and Flicks. He's written a lot about Dagon. He's written about The Pit and the Pendulum. He's actually written about
All's Fortress, Castle Freak.
Yeah, dude's made a bunch of movies, and Levin Good of Movies, Films, and Flicks, John's Horror Corners, written reviews about Stuart Gordon's films. And I called you up, and I texted you. That's a new call. I think I did call you once, and you never called me back, because people just don't do that anymore. I texted you, and you're like, yeah, man, I'm in. So that was a relief, and so we both watched this movie. I mean, it's streaming everywhere, is it not, Chris Kelly?
Yeah, it's easier to say where is this not streaming? Yeah, the only two places that I found that it's not streaming on is Netflix and Shudder.
I mean,
it's literally, you can go anywhere. It's on Amazon Prime, Fossum, FilmRise, Roku, Tubi, Pluto, Vudu, and FlixFling.
Everywhere. And so this movie, I mean, the cinematographer is Mark Alberg. He shot Re-Animator, House 2, Transfer Arena, Robot Jocks, the Bruce Willis classic Striking Distance, Michael Jackson's Black or White music video, My Boyfriend's Back, Beverly Hills Cop 3, both of the Brady Bunch movies. So this is a guy.
He also did Hell Night, Chained Heat, Trancers, Ghoulies, Re-Animator. He did Dream On. Remember the show Dream On? Yeah, Dream On. That was a great show. It was about a kid that was he's an adult, but as a kid he was like raised on television. So like throughout the whole show, he like envisions himself having conversations with people. Then it does references to old television shows or movies in his mind. It's a really funny show.
This movie comes out, right? Stuart Gordon directed it. Big name. I mean, he knows how to handle decent sized movies. He had shot big movies before. This movie comes out in 2004? Yeah, 2003, sorry. And 2003 it comes out. And I mean, it looks like it's shot on parchment paper.
That's one of the things I think is probably what most people probably notice the most about this movie when they first watch it is that it is shot very obviously micro budget. I mean, it was started in like the early 2000s whenever shooting digitally was probably just becoming a thing. So there was tons and tons and tons of movies that came out like one right after the other. And it was produced through the Asylum, which you remember the Asylum films, which were known for their, they were called mockbusters.
This is the first movie they produced.
It was one of the first ones. They started in 1997, but didn't really have too many films.
Well, yeah, they distributed, right? Oh, no, I guess they said Death Valley, The Revenge of Bloody Bill was their first in-house. But then before that, they were distributing. So then they stepped up into the game with the classic Snakes on a Train, the Da Vinci Treasure. I mean, they
Aliens
also did
versus Hunters.
Transmorphers. I had a friend who worked on that.
The Day the Earth Stopped, Mega Piranha, movies like that. That's more like what they're known for.
They hit big with Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus, and we're putting big in quotation marks.
Yeah, well, all their movies are made for less than $1 million. They actually, the guy who created, one of the creators of The Asylum, which was one of the many producers on this movie, David Michael Latt, David Rimwani, and Sherry Strain, who are all founding members of The Asylum. David was quoted as saying that the production cost of all of their movies are, quote, well under $1 million. So, I would say, like, with King of the Ants, the money is mainly directed towards the special effects, which is in a movie like this where you would want to direct it. And I don't know about you, but whenever you see George Wendt dead, it looks like George Wendt.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
He's frozen.
It literally looked like, I mean, that guy literally got hit by a van.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that later on, but these movies are made extremely cheaply. I mean, you can tell that a lot of this is very guerrilla style, shoulder rig. A lot of the costumes are all owned by the people who are the actors.
You'll never see a single shot. Basically, if there's two people in a scene, it's the camera. It's a two shot.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no over the shoulder.
The color correctness, and I'd say probably a Steadicam would have saved this movie. But not to drone too much on that. But it's an interesting story if you think I'm like reading about it. It's about a guy who's, he just does whatever he can to make money. I think he's supposed to be in his mid-20s. He then meets a guy played by George Wendt, who goes by his last name's Duke. He says that, give me your number and I'll call you if I have another job that ever pops up. Sort of like how we do in film is like, oh, well, a buddy of mine's moving or a buddy of mine needs help cleaning out a house. Like, would you mind? I'll give you a couple $100, stuff like that. So he does like, sure, as a side gig. So he calls him and puts him in touch with his boss, played by one of the Baldwin brothers.
Daniel Baldwin, Ray Matthews.
His character is Ray, yeah. And he wants him to follow Ron Livingston.
That's the weirdest cameo too, right?
Strangest cameo, because he wasn't like an unknown at the time. He was known for Office Space.
Yeah, he had done Swingers. Like, he had been in movies.
He was a known name.
Yeah.
So he the knockoff Chris Pine. What's his name?
Sean Crowley.
Sean Crowley is hired to follow him around, follow Ron Livingston around because he's sort of like a whistleblower. And then he gets some type of dirt on him and gives it to Daniel Baldwin. Daniel Baldwin then shows up to his house drunkenly, which I don't know about you, but it seemed like he was legitimately drunk.
Oh, yeah. And so when he said, how long have you been waiting here? And he shows the Jack Daniels bottle that's 20%, 80% empty.
Yeah.
I'm like, he consumed not 80% of it, but he drank a third of that. You know what I mean?
You could tell. I was like, no, I don't think he's acting. I think they kind of fed him the lines.
There's some sweat in this film, and I like how it's grimy, right? I like how it's...
Yeah, I like the grit.
You see the sweat in the armpits. You see the booze draining from everyone's foreheads. When they're complaining about not having beer, I'm pretty sure they drank it all. But it does. So, Chris, you watched this before I did, and so the movie gets real nasty, and we'll get into that, right? So he goes meets Daniel Baldwin, then he kills a guy, he gets double-crossed, then he gets tortured to lose his brain, so he can't think anymore, so he won't remember anything, so he's just in a vegetative state. But it all goes wrong, and there's a lot of death. You sent me a text saying this is a mean movie, and you liked that, correct?
Yeah, I think that the ending of probably the last third of the film is very enjoyable because Sean Crowley just kind of goes ape shit.
Yeah.
But rightfully so. He was beaten and tortured by these guys for a while. We don't really have an exact figure, but I would say probably about a week. And he just exacts his revenge on them. And it's very brutal, the ending. He bites George Wendt's jugular, rips it open so he dies, and then is saved by his friend. And as his friend comes to save him in his van, hits the guy Bennett hits Bennett.
Well, actually his name's Beckett in this movie, but he's Bennett in Commando, so I'm just going to call him.
You think that's a little cheeky, like winking the gun towards the crowd?
Oh, it has to be. I mean, once you find out his name's Beckett, you're like, oh.
Yeah, when I looked him up, because when I was watching the movie, I was like, damn, does that guy ever look familiar? And then I looked him up and I was like, ah!
Bennett.
Nice.
The classic, you know what they called him on Commando? So he showed up without working out and never did a date. Like, he just drank a lot. And the stunt coordinator on Commando said that he was a sock stuffed with marshmallows. I liked him in this, though. His character was the most redeeming of the lot.
He was the nicest one. He even has that line at the end of the movie. He's like, "Why are you doing this to me? I was the one who was saving you. I was being nice." And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you should have stopped them, but you didn't. But yeah, although you did give me water and whatnot, and you were the one who's didn't give him water, gave him booze. He was the nicest one to him, but it's kind of like saying, you're out of all the people who shot me, you only shot me in the foot.
Yeah,
like come on, man.
You hit me with a tennis racket, not a bat.
Yeah. Everyone shot me in the chest. You just hit me with a tennis racket. And it's like, well, but that guy literally got hit by a vehicle.
Yeah, he did.
That's not faking. Whenever Sean gets saved, and then he gets kicked out of the van by his buddy, and then he goes to the homeless shelter that
his buddy. How much of a jerk? So his buddy saved him, and then his buddy. He's been tortured for a week. He's dehydrated. He's concussed. He has been whacked and thwacked and beat up, and then his buddy just is like, "You're acting weird. Get out of the truck." So
he kicks him out because he's laughing about the fact that he murdered 2 people. He's like, his buddy's like, "You killed a guy, remember?" And he goes,
"Yeah,
no, I killed 2." And he's like, "Who's the other guy?" He's like, "I ripped his neck open." And then he's like, "Get out of my car." And it's like, but then they seem to be near-ish the homeless shelter that Ron Livingston's wife works at.
Carrie Wurr.
And that is quite an interesting storyline. I like that. It's very film noir. Like the film, like I've said this to a few people about this movie because everybody I speak to, no one ever heard of this film. I said it's very noir. Like there's a lot of dark characters. The only thing you're missing is the femme fatale, but everything about this movie screams like 1940s dark cinema, in my opinion. Mobsters, you have, the killings, you have the revenge storyline at the end. And I think that, in my opinion, if this movie was remade, I think it would be, and I don't know if the name King of the Ants would still be good, but if you called it something else, maybe, King of the Ants, why not? It would do very well, I think, at least with audiences nowadays. But I think the main thing that's throwing everybody off is what we said, the look of it.
They wanted this movie to get made for years. So George Wendt gave this script to Stuart Gordon because they worked together in Chicago. Stuart Gordon's a Chicago boy, and no one would do it. So when Asylum said, "Hey, we'll give you $12," they're like, "Sold."
We got 2 Lincolns and a Washington with your name on it. There we go.
And I will say, though, this movie, I made the joke about the parchment paper, and maybe that's too easy. I do think they were rushed with a lot of the production. And I also like the daytime aspect of it. I like that, you think about the traditional noir. I mean, they were filmed in black and white, but a lot of it's at night. A lot of it's in creaky corridors and in offices that are dark, in the kind of corners and the shadows a lot. Just the way I think about early noir, Dashiell Hammett type stuff.
And there's a lot of hard shadows. Like you'll see like someone turning to the side and you'll see that one side of their face is completely in shadow.
Yeah. See, what that means is that they're half good and half bad. Like there's none of that in this movie. This is drenched in sunlight. This is they
probably just couldn't afford it.
Yeah. Night shoots, night shoots are a pain in the butt. You have to get lights. Or you have to find practical lights somewhere.
I've explained that to people. It's like, well, you need to have a nice big balloon overhead, and you got to have other. You basically have to make it look like it's shot during the day, almost. I mean, it's a lot of lights, a lot of money.
Even with excellent cinematographers like Roger Deakins, who at night they just shoot with practical, but you replace all the lights in those practical things, and you frame and you. So even though where the lights are coming from are practical. When I mean practical, I'm not saying they set up a giant 10K and just bomb the light through the woods. And you're like, where's that light? That light's coming parallel to the ground. I don't understand this. So he's Roger Deakins' movie. It's lit by street lights. It's lit by car headlights. It's lit by neon signs, that kind of thing. But this movie, there's really no nighttime. And even the nighttime shots feel like they were filmed during the day, then edited towards night. I mean, this is just the easy movie, but it's still, and I think this is credit to Stuart Gordon because it still captures a very draining